Okay, stitch this if you have a subtle feminist power move that you do on the regular.
So I work in the business world, corporate America specifically, and I have a pretty intense job that I work with a lot of men with. And growing up, my dad always told me, because he worked in corporate America, to have a super firm handshake. And I noticed when I was in corporate America that men would always try to shake my hand just a little bit harder than I was shaking theirs, kind of assert a little bit of physical dominance over me. So now whenever I shake a guy's hand that I'm meeting, in a business meeting, a new CEO, whatever it may be, I shake their hand for about 2 milliseconds, gauge how hard they're shaking my hand, and then I administer just a little bit more pressure than they have asserted upon me. And every single time, they go.
Okay, stitch this if you have a subtle feminist power move that you do on the regular.
When somebody tells me a story involving another person, as long as it is in a positive light, I assume she, her pronouns. If a friend of mine says, I went to the doctor and got some really good news, I'll respond with, oh, what did she say? Or if somebody says, my kid's principal did this really cool thing at the school the other day. Oh, that's awesome, good for her. Always assume she, her pronouns, no matter what, as long as it's positive.
Stitch this if you have a subtle feminist power move that you do on the regular.
This isn't subtle, but I do it regularly. Rewind about 10 years ago. I was 22 years old and a freshly graduated college student in my very first office job, and my supervisor's name was Rob. At the time, I was still identifying as a woman. Today, I'm trans non-binary, and I know that back then, when I was dressing really femininely, like aggressively femininely, it was because I was in denial and I was trying to assert my femininity when I knew deep down it didn't fit me. I've always been tall, like in the 5'9" range, and height is not considered a very feminine trait, and so I was very insecure about my height. And that made it kind of difficult when Rob, very early on in my tenure at this place, came up to me and said, hey, you need to start wearing heels to work. I was wearing flats because, guess what? I walk like a baby giraffe in heels. But I did as he said, and I got a pair of heels, and at our next meeting, I walked in, toddled in, wearing them, and Rob looked me up, and Rob looked me down, and Rob realized with horror, oh shit! The office girl is his height, almost exactly. Suddenly, I went from being the cute little feminine office girl to, I guess, a physical threat because I was his height. This was a miscalculation on Rob's part, obviously, but it could not go unchallenged because then, from then on, every time I entered the room, he made sure I was sitting down and he was standing up. If he entered the room and I was standing, he would somehow get me to sit down, offer me a chair, whatever. If I came into his office to talk, he would make me sit down and then he would stand up and sit on the edge of his desk, so he was kind of looming over me. And it was really clear that he was intimidated by my physical presence and did not like the fact that I was that tall, but also he wants to look at the cute office girl in heels. And I thought this was fucking ridiculous. Like, this is fucking ridiculous. I'm uncomfortable in these shoes. You're uncomfortable with me in these shoes. And yet here you are, like, making sure you're always the dominant physical presence. Like, this is exhausting. What's wrong with you? I'm proud of 22-year-old me for being able to recognize that something about the situation was fucked up, because what 22-year-old me did, I'm still proud of to this day. I marched my happy ass down to the shoe store and I bought the tallest heels I could find that were still workplace appropriate. I mean, I'm talking like a pair of designer heels with a big old platform under the toe and a very tall stiletto heel. Totally workplace appropriate, but Jesus Christ, I was like 6'3". Rob did not like the fact that I was now even taller than him. Not one bit. So one day I'm at my desk adjusting my shoe and he sidles up, sees me doing it, and oh, that's his moment. And he says, you know, Star, you don't have to wear those shoes anymore if you don't want to. You can go back to flats. It's fine. It's fine. Yeah, it's fine. Just a suggestion. Only if you want to. Did I go back to flats, though? Not on your fucking life. The heels stayed, and now I'm actually pretty good at walking in them, thanks to Rob. Despite coming out as non-binary now, I know most of the world looks at me and immediately thinks woman. And you know what? That's honestly on them. But what I carry with me from that experience to this day is when I know I'm going to walk into a room and be underestimated, I rock those heels. Suck it, Rob.